Straight games, no filler. This is Status Quo, episode number 16. I am Queasy Crayfish, joined as always by my esteemed colleague,
Mars Vindicator.
And we have another interesting show for you. As always, an interesting show this week. And we're going to get into some flake news as always. And we have another edition of OverUnder, our favorite segment, or at least one of my favorite segments, talking about overrated and underrated things, from all sorts of different gaming angles. And this week we're going to be talking about soundtracks, overrated and underrated soundtracks, although mostly underrated because it's kind of lame to be calling out overrated soundtrack constantly. But, of course we know that, Chrono Trigger sucks and has a terrible soundtrack. And so does Zelda and, Mario and all of that. They're all terrible.
Actually,
actually, JK. But anyway, so we got that. We were going to talk about also just music in general in games and the way it's kind of transformed over the years. And we're going to talk about Super Smash Brothers at EVO. Had EVO a couple weeks ago now, and there were some interesting doings going on with the Smash Grand Finals, which led some to question whether or not Smash was, actually a fighting game. And finally, we're going to talk about the IGN plagiarism controversy and how that affects our opinion on reviews. So, Mars Vindicator, are you ready for some flake news to start things off?
As always.
All right. Well, this is a few of these are the very flake news edition. Number one here, we have Diablo 3 is headed to Switch, apparently, allegedly.
You said Diablo 3?
Diablo 3 is headed to Switch.
Isn't that game like 10 years old?
Something like that.
I mean, okay. What I'll say about that is I guess awesome, but I mean, I guess the reason why is because some games that are old that I like have gone to Switch and I've been happy. But then there's some games like this that I just see as old. And Diablo 3 is now like Resident Evil 6. Like it's on everything because it was on PS3, 360, et cetera, et cetera. So, whoop-de-dee.
Yeah. Of course, it's got Nintendo exclusive, armor and other content
or something. Zelda stuff. Or something?
Yeah, it was the Ganondorf armor, I believe, is what I saw. The thing about this to me is like it's a PC game. It controls best on a PC, and it was already bad enough controlling it with I played this game on PS4. And it was like incredibly boring and lame playing that on a PS4 controller, in my opinion. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like playing it on, Joy-Cons. But yeah, that's the news.
Right. Hopefully, I hope it has touchscreen controls.
Touchscreen controls?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. All right. Oh, man, this one. Microsoft is coming out with a gold-plated Xbox One X as a prize for Xbox Live Gold Quests for the month of August.
Gold Quests?
Gold Quests. You don't do the Xbox Live Gold Quests?
I'm not exactly sure what Gold Quests are.
I'm not either. I'd never heard of this, but I think it's like achievement hunting or something like that. And I guess every month you can get, outrageous amount of achievements or something. Correct us if we're wrong here. I honestly had never heard of this until I saw this. Of course, you think I'm going to do some research, you're sorely mistaken. But I just like gold-plated Xbox One X. That was that was the interesting part to me.
Well, okay.
As if it wasn't lavish enough having, the Xbox One X, but now you have a gold-plated one.
The gold-plated Xbox One X is absurd. Whatever. That's cool. To me, what kills me. I don't mean to blow that off, but I'm just saying, like, what kills me about it is like Microsoft is so desperate to have an exclusive game that they just turned having an Xbox into a game. Because that's what this sounds like to me. So now you can win a prize. Like having an Xbox is now the game.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got to participate in Xbox community activities, and you know,
What is this? Some
got to do
cult
it.
shit?
It
Yeah,
is.
it's
So
flake news. This is
yeah,
flake.
it's very flake news. We're upgrading it to very flake news.
Yeah.
Next up, we have THQ Nordic has apparently acquired the rights to Time Splitters.
Oh, so that's what that's all about. Because I have some good gaming associates. Great men taking over the world. I'll shout them out here. And I think they had made a post about Time Splitters today. And you know they post about games, and I was wondering like why they choose Time Splitters today. So that must have been what it was. So that's dope. I don't know if I play anything that THQ Nordic makes. I don't know if you know if I'm that trusting in them having the license, but it'd definitely be cool, you know, for a another Time Splitters to come out.
Yeah, I was looking through their list of games, and they had some good ones in there. They also it was a really weird list. I mean, like most recently, they had like Elex and like Halo Wars 2 and stuff on there. So it was kind of, it was very diverse.
And they did have Quantum Break. I didn't complete
yeah.
that, but I did want to play that game.
Yes, cool. Quantum Break was on there, and there were some other decent ones. So you know, non-flake news, I guess.
Right? Yeah, Time Splitters is
it's definitely definitely good to see Time Splitters back.
And I'll just say too, I think especially with the art style of that game and how games are going on now, you know, with Fortnite and obviously shooters, this could be a big time for it. So if they do this could be very big for THQ Nordic.
Yeah. Battlefield 5 pre-order sales are, quote, weak compared to Black Ops 4 and Red Dead Redemption. This is just funny to me. I mean, I would think that Black Ops 4 would also have a weak pre-sales, or pre-order sales, but I guess Battlefield 5 is exceptionally weak, according to this piece of flake news.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're weak. I would bet that they're weak, you know, compared to Call of Duty's at the past. But I mean, it's Battlefield. You know, it's not that I think that Battlefield is bad or anything. But you know, again, you know, yeah, like I love Yakuza, and I'm sure there were like 6 pre-orders of that game total.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not for real, but so I mean, I think that not that I think Battlefield's a bad game or that people aren't playing it, but I think that, yeah, I mean, it's you can only have so many games at the top, you know, that everybody's, you know, hounding. So you already have Fortnite, you're gonna have Call of Duty, you're gonna have Red Dead. I mean, Destiny's still not done. You're gonna have the 2Ks and the Maddens and the FIFAs, you know, and then you got the even kind of bigger exclusives like Spider-Man, and then on top of all that, you still have Anthem. So yeah, I mean, what do you expect people to do?
Yeah. Yeah, but you would just think for a storied, you know, at this point franchise like that, it would be.
Is it that storied though?
I mean, it has a lot of games in it. That's all I mean by story.
Yeah, like I'm not, you know, it's not that I'm saying it's garbage, but it's kind of like it's always just been the second fiddle, you know, like
right.
Battlefield's out too.
Yeah. So I think that's flake news. Lastly, I wanted to throw a quick shout out to Doom Eternal, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but there was some controversy, you know, over this past weekend about Doom Eternal trailer coming out, and supposedly, you know, there was some kind of poking fun at the social justice PC rhetoric and stuff like that, and a lot of people were upset that they were calling demons mortally challenged in the gameplay demo for Doom Eternal, and mocking it as a sort of PC thing. So it goes right along. It's something that Polygon, I'm sure, was all up in arms about. So that was a nice piece of flake news, I thought, as well.
Oh, that I see. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a gameplay demo, and you're going around through all these places, and you hear an announcement on some TV screen or something that says, you know, don't call demons, call them mortally challenged, you know, and that's the that's the polite thing to call them. And so a lot of people were very upset about that.
I mean, yeah, people get upset over everything. Yeah, that, you know, I mean, it is. I think the joke is funny, you know, because I mean, even if I agree with some of the things that they, you know, I guess with some of the social changes we make, you still have to be able to poke fun at yourself, you know. And I mean, even if things are right, if it's happening all the time, it becomes a thing. So I think that shit's funny.
It is,
you know.
But without further ado, let's start talking about music and games. And we're just going to start out over under, but I guess this is more under segment for us here, talking about underrated and overrated video game soundtracks. And just to get the over out of the way, I had a few here listed. And I don't know if Mars Vindicator has some overrated soundtracks as well, but there were a few here that I wanted to just mention. And when I say overrated, I don't mean specifically like, you know, these are trash or anything like that. I just mean that I think they might have a reputation that is greater than maybe the music actually is. Even that's hard to say sometimes. Like when I think about, you know, pretty much every game in the Mario franchise, sure, there's some amazing themes in there. There's some iconic themes in there. You know, I love the soundtrack to Super Mario 64. You know, grew up listening to those songs. But when you look at the reality of it, it's like almost every track in that game gets repeated, you know, multiple times throughout the game. You know, there's a lot of kind of quirky ones in there. So I feel like we can call it overrated in a sense. Sonic 1 and 2, just to be fair, I think Sonic 1 is a great soundtrack. I was just going over the tracks in my head again, you know, a few minutes ago. And I mean, there's a lot of good ones on there. I mean, you can't go wrong with Green Hill Zone and Spring Yard and all those, Starlight. But is it as good as Sonic 3? I don't think so. I think that was kind of the pinnacle. You know, Sonic CD as well. That soundtrack gets so much press. Sonic Adventure 2, just to cover all the Sonic games. And lastly, Dark Souls. I think Dark Souls has kind of an overrated soundtrack as well, but we won't spend a whole lot of time on overrated. I think it's just a little cruel and probably, you know, rubbing people the wrong way. But anyway, Mars Vindicator, did you have any quick overrated soundtracks you wanted to throw in there?
Overrated. Well, okay. I don't necessarily have many overrated soundtracks. But I guess to me personally, where I've always felt that music was a bit overrated, I think was in general just kind of on the Super Nintendo. You know, I there's like a couple of game stores I go to and they're always playing, you know, like remixes or, you know, music from those games. And I mean, yeah, and I get it. Like, you're like, that's a whole system. You know, I get it, you know, but I think like just a lot of the tracks from like the Mega Man games and all the other first party games, I think, you know, people like hound them a lot because they come from, you know, very big games. But I think if you compare that to even some of the smaller stuff on SNES or some of the stuff on the Genesis, I think the Genesis was, honestly, I just find it objectively better. So I will say that. But any like one specific game that I can think of that's just like flat out overrated, probably not. Well, honestly, maybe Mega Man in general. Some of those games, I don't know. Music has always just been kind of noisy to me. Like, you know, the song for Mega Man X1, like the first song, it's like stuck in my head because my friend had a SNES when I was growing up, but I mean, even still, like it, I don't know. It's just kind of noisy to me. So, and the sound effects, you know.
Yeah. I dig where you're coming from with that. Super Nintendo, I think, just overall inferior sound chip to the Genesis. I don't think a lot of people are gonna. Well, I don't know. A lot of people might argue with that, but
oh no, a lot of people will, and they'll be pissed off.
We're in agreement on that.
Yeah, I mean, I love Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, but you know, not everything.
All right. So underrated. I'm interested to hear your picks for underrated.
Okay. Well, first I would give a little shout out to this one game that I just started playing recently. It's I definitely not one a lot of people have played, but it's called Blazing Star. Okay, and this is by Neo Geo. It was a later Neo Geo game. So if you guys don't know about the Neo Geo, basically it was an arcade system as well as a home console, and it basically ran from like, I think somewhere in the early 90s, like 91-ish, all the way up until like maybe like 2000, right? So this was like a much later SNK game, a Neo Geo game. But it's only been released on the Neo Geo. And then now they have it on like, you can download on the Switch and stuff. So like we haven't played it, but the soundtrack to it is very, very dope. It actually doesn't really totally match like a space shmup. Like it doesn't sound what you would think it sound like, kind of more, you know, like that like spacey, you know, high tech feel. It's kind of like this really chill, like melodic, kind of like techno house-ish type of stuff, if you will. So yeah, that game is really dope. Another game soundtrack that I think is, and I think we've been through it with this one before, but Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I get it. It's totally different from the previous games, who also had great soundtracks, and it doesn't really even match the vibe of the game at all. But one of the things I like most about Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is like you have all these Marvel and Capcom characters, so that's a mashup in itself. Put onto these like generic 2D, 3D stages that have nothing to do with anything. And then you have this like weird jazz soundtrack that has like vocals in it sometimes. So it's like literally, it's like that whole game is just like a mashup of things that don't even belong together. But it's like the most iconic fighting game. And that music, you know, taken out of the context of, you know, going along with that game, I think is really, really good. A lot of the songs are really chill. I like listening to it.
Yeah, that music is, it's somehow is fitting. I think it's, you know, we've played it so much now that it just kind of like, I can't imagine it any other way.
Exactly.
And I think it's like, it somehow captures kind of that like old comic book feel along with like, you know, kind of arcade style, like music. I feel like is like, specifically just Capcom music. I think just like with those horns and all of that, like it's definitely a great mashup.
It most definitely is, you know. So yeah, I you know, I won't say I've always loved it. I remember hearing it at first and it being weird because especially, you know, because it doesn't even match, you know, like because in the other games in the series, like the themes were attached to the characters. When they come in, it would change, and that was like a big part of the game.
Yeah,
that's something I want to talk about later. But this one just had these tracks, you know, so it was really weird. But then another game I want to mention, I mean, it's very obvious. I'm a big fighting game / arcade person, but Virtua Fighter 1 and 2. And I'm going to touch on this again later as well. But those games, I'll just say for now, they just have fantastic soundtracks. And I think not only do those games not get the respect they deserve for being like basically the first 3D fighter, but also having, to me, I think they had one of the first truly like great sounding fighting game soundtracks as well.
Yeah, so. I'd agree with that. For me, of course, I had to throw Shenmue in there. It's my favorite game. And I just recently Shenmue.
Is that underrated though?
Well, I mean, is Marvel vs. Capcom 2 underrated? I don't know.
The soundtrack is.
You think so?
People hate that.
You think so?
I know so.
I don't know. I watch a lot of fighting game streams where they play that music in the background all the time.
Yeah, now.
It is. Yeah, I mean, the argument, of course, could be made that Shenmue. I mean, I think the game in general is kind of underrated in some respects. But I mean, the thing that's underrated about it is, like, of course, you have like some big themes in there. Of course, like the main theme and, you know, the 70-person battle and all that. But there's like such diversity in the styles and you know, you get like these ambient themes and you get these very ethnic, you know, Chinese or Japanese themes in there. You get all kinds of, you know, musical, like film score type music in there, along with like all of of course, the cassette tape songs. So I mean, there's a huge diversity in that soundtrack. And I believe Shenmue Dojo or Shenmue fans just recently put that up, the entire game for download, the soundtrack. And definitely I snagged up that whole thing because, you know, I don't care if it's like 200 tracks, but it's an amazing soundtrack. Also wanted to mention, since we were talking about fighting games, Tekken 4. Of course, Tekken 3, I think, is the, you know, everyone knows Tekken 3 has great music, but I think Tekken 4 is often overlooked, and I think that has some great tracks on it, especially, what's it called? I can't think of it now. That it's like
is it the airport song?
That one. Well, I mean, there's so many. This the one where you're like fighting. There's like the skyscrapers in the background and stuff. Oh, what's it called?
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's
Authentic Sky.
Authentic Sky. That's the one.
Okay.
Yes, and the final theme in like the Mishima Dojo and all that. Like that's a great theme. It has a weird like kind of dark electronic feel to it. And this was before Tekken soundtrack, it basically just switched to all dubstep. All dubstep a couple of games later. So it was a really nice soundtrack and really fit the mood of that game quite well. And lastly, just to throw out there real quick, because I don't want to go on and on about this forever, but Myst, I think Myst has a very underrated soundtrack, very moody. Command and Conquer 1 and Red Alert also have great soundtracks. Some great tracks on Command and Conquer 1 soundtrack. I mean, CNC Thang, Just Do It, Act on Instinct, a lot of great tracks on there. Ninja Gaiden on the Xbox, the remake, that's fantastic, or reboot, I guess. Fantastic soundtrack. And lastly, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory with the Amon Tobin produced soundtrack. Great trip hop ambient mashup kind of soundtrack that really fits the stealthy mood of that game quite well. So any other last underrated soundtracks you want to throw in there?
Hey, CNC Thing produced by Dr. Dre. Like, I'm listening to it right now.
Yeah. Wow. I know, it's amazing. CNC Thing.
I had no idea there was a song like this on there. It's actually spelled Thing. Everybody like THANG.
It is. Yeah, it is. I highly recommended.
I mean, any other underrated soundtracks? No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I'm sure that there are. I guess there's not any for me.
Probably a ton.
I'll let you segue into the next topic, but I was just going to say, like, I feel like I listen to game soundtracks. I hear them if I like them. And then when I don't like them, I just kind of don't hear them.
Yes.
So and then all the ones that I like, it's hard for me to like, I guess I've never really looked at a lot of other people's opinions about soundtracks. So, I mean, there's some that I know people love, obviously, like just J-Ground Radio or something, but the other ones, I don't know that people don't like them, I guess. So
yeah, funny that we didn't even mention that game until just now, because that's fantastic.
Well, that's another point I want to get to when we even talk about soundtracks.
All right. Well, I mean, you basically already segued in there. I mean, the whole thing for me with music and games was, back in the 16-bit era, 32-bit, and everything. I mean, it was always like the music was a huge part of just the audio of the game. I mean, it wasn't just music. It was like that was like the main component of the audio. That's what you were constantly hearing throughout the game was music and, the sound effects, of course. But I mean, like it wasn't so much like, you didn't have dialogue as much. You didn't have all these other things, cutscenes and stuff like that a lot of times. So it was like the music was really just carrying things along, almost like a silent movie, the way, you depended on the music to really keep people interested. And, over the years, it kind of transitioned away from that, and you started to get starting kind of, I guess, really in the fifth generation, you started to get a lot of like orchestral soundtracks coming in with like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. And then eventually it just took over to the point where it was like, scoring. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess for me, I look at the scores. I mean, it's not just because I like these games personally, but I do see what you're saying about how, like, they had orchestral scores. But to me, like, the Final Fantasy music, at least at that time, I wouldn't even include in that group because I wouldn't even want people to see it that way. Because I don't even feel like that was the start of it. I think some other games did it. But because Final Fantasy music, even though it was like orchestral, it was still very like unique and like its own music.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I think and of course, like, there wasn't really dialogue in those games, the PlayStation ones, it was just all text. And so you still had the kind of just the background music to produce most of the effect of the audio and everything. So I think that's definitely true. But I just mean in the sense that it was kind of creating the precedent of like, now we're going to start using orchestras and stuff like that. Because it was, in the following generation where it became like film scores. Like when you were creating the music for a game, it was almost in the same way that you would be creating music for a film. And it was much more about, I guess, like setting the tone, for certain scenes or certain events and stuff like that. And you lost a lot of like the melodic stuff that you got from previous generations. That was like the catchiness of a lot of those songs and themes and everything. And I think that was kind of where, of course, and also loops. I think loops played a big part in that too, because I mean, that's probably the main reason I love like electronic music and hip hop and stuff like that, is because like I was so used to listening to this music that was just looped over and over again in these games. And in later generations, we got away from that to a more like dynamic film type score.
Right. See, well, yeah. I mean, film. They definitely became film type scores, but I guess where I'm trying to draw the line is like, like you can have like a film type score, but then you can just have like trash, And I guess to me, because I mean, there's a lot of games where the music is just like, it's like how how you said before, like it's literally just in the background,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess part of me feels like that, it does have to do with it being scores, but then I guess there's just like another big element to it, to where like that part of the game just doesn't get the same sort of creative energy as just the other parts do. I guess I feel like maybe even like regardless of it being a score or not. But I mean, I guess a lot of that, kind of coincides too with games just not being as creative and different as they used to be, in those times as well. Anyway, I feel like the point was to kind of create this, in a way, like very general and very, movie-ish experience, and the music just followed suit,
Right. Well, and I mean, to be fair, I think that like even in movies, I mean, you don't get a lot of movies with like really unique and interesting soundtracks. I mean, just right. Like, so I think for games to follow suit with that, it kind of ends up being the same problem. Like for instance, I have there's a guy I know that I work with who was telling me about, we were talking about like, good soundtracks or games that we like the music to. And of course I was bringing up like Streets of Rage and stuff like that. And he goes, oh yeah, the Witcher 3 actually has a really great soundtrack. And I'm just thinking like, I played like up to the end of the base game of that. And like, I cannot recall any of the music in that game.
Like how?
I don't know.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. And that's what well, I feel like the unfortunate truth to stuff like this is, again, I hate to sound like some elitist asshole, but, I think a lot of people just have, just non-unique taste in music. I think that they're cool with just listening to what, other people hear anyway, so yeah, it's kind of like, you may hear somebody say that, but then if you go look at their like CDs and, the only CDs, excuse me, they have are like, now 67, then I wouldn't necessarily, that would seem par for the course,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's just music in games is definitely not as important as it used to be. I mean, you will get the odd game here and there that has a good soundtrack or a lot of attention being put into the soundtrack. But like, yeah, like The Witcher 3, like, I mean, it's just a movie soundtrack. Like there's nothing, nothing really iconic or interesting about, some violin solo that you heard while you were out, roaming the countryside on your horse. It's like, right. Especially when you compare it to something like Ocarina of Time or something like that, where you can like recall those themes easily, to this day. And I mean, even people that didn't grow up playing those games, right. I think because they're just so melodic and so unique and catchy and everything. Yeah, it's, of course, I think they were more like genre specific as well. I mean, you look at like Streets of Rage 2, like you want to say, it's like just like a good house soundtrack,
Right, yeah, exactly. But what is the genre even?
Right, yeah, we just completely got away from that to where it's just kind of like accompaniment, and I mean, yeah, like name a game from E3 this year that had like that you think is going to have like a good soundtrack. Like, none really. I mean, maybe like Sekiro, maybe. I don't know.
The only game that I think could have something good, maybe a good song or two is Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah.
But that's again like it's almost at that point it's almost like how could it not?
Right.
Because I mean, with the way that they've, they obviously have this, very defined, thing to pull from, and it's, yeah, there's some games that I will say, like, it's not that I do agree, with a lot of this. There's some games, okay, like Mass Effect, for example, right? I don't think that Mass Effect has like, I wouldn't necessarily call it like a great memorable soundtrack. I do specifically like the song that plays when you look at the galaxy map because it's very galaxy-ish, right? But I guess the thing about it is that it's kind of like what you would expect to hear while you're looking at a map of space. Mm-hmm. It's just like this space music, and so it just kind of sounds like what you would expect to hear, right? And that's cool and everything. But it's not exactly it's not super memorable, And so I guess that's kind of my thing about it. Whereas like, I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily know what music goes along with, beating people up on the street. But Streets of Rage has made house go along with it. So, to me, that's kind of cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, agreed. The last point I wanted to just throw in there is this is just my theory, but I think that a lot of games, they tend to mix the music a lot lower, just in the audio mix, like by default, compared to old games. So the old games, it was like very prominent in the mix, like the music was basically driving the audio. But nowadays, like a lot of times the music will be at like 80%, or even lower sometimes. By default, and I found that kind of takes away from the impact of it. So a lot of times what I'll do when I get a new game is I'll just turn the music all the way up and turn the sound effects down a little bit, and then just turn the TV up, just to kind of try to recapture that feeling of the music really powering the audio and the scenes and stuff like that. But that's just a theory of mine. I don't know if other people are in agreement with that or not, but.
Well, I do think that is a part of it. One thing I will say that I think is a part of it as well. Obviously this doesn't affect every genre, but I know, for example, with Sega, right? Like a lot of their strategy for arcade games was like this senses overload, right? So that's why when you look, especially when you look at a lot of their games, you had the driving games, like the shooting games or the fighting games, of course, with the stick, of course. So every game had like a very unique way to play it. So, you're going to see some great things. Then, of course, also you're going to hear some great things. Now, obviously they didn't deal with smell and, taste, but, you were going to hear like a very immersive, like and crazy sound. And one of the things I used to love was like when you're like at the arcade, you just hear that kind of like general noise in the background. But then the moment you put the quarter in the game that you're going to play, like that game's like music and sound effects get louder.
Yes.
Right? Because you're next to it. And I feel like, that was something that they used because they had to draw people into the game, which is why games had they had a attract mode, which if people don't know what that is, it's just when the game will just like play a demo loop or something, right? So and I think the music was a part of that for a lot of those games. And yeah, of course, this doesn't affect like Final Fantasy or something because it was never an arcade game. But one genre where I think it definitely has had a huge impact on it is obviously fighting games, because that's why I mentioned Virtua Fighter. I mean, it had a great soundtrack and great sound. So did a lot of the Street Fighter games back then. The Street Fighter 3 soundtrack is just amazing, and that's me liking that personally. But even the ones for like 2 and Alpha, I think were pretty good. But then like, it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like a clear line. Like the moment when fighting games started to be more console oriented, their soundtracks also started to suck. And that's because they didn't really have to bring you in with the music. They had to bring you in with things like trailers, or guest characters, which we discussed last week, mm-hmm. So it just kind of fell off as a part of it. So, now that they don't have to draw you in with good sound, they probably just don't even care, but I need some, look, damn it. I need a Japanese salary man singing Daytona USA. You know what I'm saying? That's what I need in my games.
Yes. Another great name drop there. Exactly. Let's go away. The Daytona USA theme.
There it is.
Well, there's not really any good transition from Daytona USA to this next topic. So I'm just going to say
it is about fighting games. We were talking about fighting games.
Yeah, true. But Super Smash Brothers. Okay, now to those who don't know, those who didn't watch EVO, in the grand finals of Super Smash Brothers, of course, this is the latest version, Smash 4. There was some controversy. And basically what happened is that the two guys, forgive me, I don't remember their names. I don't really watch the Smash community that much, but the two guys that got into grand finals were good friends. They're both Bayonetta players. The community is not a big fan of Bayonetta players or just Bayonetta the character because there's a consensus that she's overpowered and she's not fun to watch and stuff like that. So you get Bayonetta versus Bayonetta in the grand finals, and there comes a moment when both players are basically just charging up and just aiming at each other, and both of them just sit there for a good 2-3 minutes, just holding down one single button on the controller, and the crowd is booing them. A lot of people are upset. The commentators are just making fun of the guys. Eventually people have to come out on stage and tell them that they have to actually play the match. It's in the rules. You cannot collude. And this was already an issue in the fighting game community a few years back with like collusion, where all these people who were friends would get into grand finals and they would decide, well, we're going to split the pot. And then they would just, kind of screw around in grand finals. And that was seen as an insult to the viewers and to, other people that were in the tournament. Because obviously if you come in third place and you tried your best and then you see number 1 and number 2 just kind of screw around in grand finals, you're going to be a little upset. So there was the collusion aspect of it. And a lot of people were just saying, well, this is why, Smash isn't a real fighting game. And, I'm not really sure how to feel about this. I know that the fighting game community had a very difficult time even accepting Smash as being, like alongside Street Fighter or Tekken or something like that. And I don't think there's definitely not a lot of crossover either between the two games. I mean, there's not a lot of Smash players, at least like top Smash players that play, Street Fighter as well at a high level or play Tekken at a high level or, you name it. And vice versa. And so they seem like almost like these two separate entities. Like you have the Smash community and you have the fighting game community, and they don't seem to really get along too well with each other. And I'm not going to, sit up here and act like this display in grand finals means, X, Y, or Z about Smash, or that it's that alone means it's not a fighting game. We've seen lots of shenanigans in other fighting games in the past. But, it does call into question, like, the kind of incongruity between these two entities as far as, are they fighting games or are they not? So Mars Vindicator, what do you think? Is Smash a fighting game?
Well, I will say, as the foremost expert on fighting games for Hyper Evo, yes, Smash is a fighting game. Okay. Smash Bros is a fighting game. All right. You want to know what else is a fighting game? Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Sega Genesis. Okay. You want to know what else is a fighting game? Clay Fighter 64 and a third. Okay.
63 and a third.
63 and a third. Excuse me. Yes, like it is a fighting game. There's an arena where two, or in the case of Smash, more people are, confined in that arena, and they are attacking each other. And there is some sort of mechanic to where, the more you get attacked, the less likely you are to win. And I mean, that's pretty much what a fighting game is. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting to go to EVO and, find a huge showing of TMNT tournament fighters on the Genesis. Okay. I'm not expecting that, right? I get that there's a line between the Capcom fighters, the Namco fighters, a lot of the SNK fighters, the Arc Systems fighters, and then everyone else, and then you have your you're gonna have, of course, Mortal Kombat in there, Tecmo in there. I get that there's kind of like this group of games that everybody says, hey, these are the fighting games, right? And then because if you were around in the 16-bit era, you remember that since fighting games were kind of the main genre back then, the way shooters are now, you just had a lot of side fighting games, right? And there's a lot of licensed fighting games. Sailor Moon had one. This didn't come out in America, but Yu Yu Hakusho had one. There's a number of Dragon Ball Z fighting games. Those are what got me into Dragon Ball Z in the first place. They kind of went into it. And they got me into emulators. Trying to play those on the SNES. So yeah, you have a lot of fighting games. J-Star's Victory Versus. This is a fighting game. But it doesn't belong at EVO. So I think the real question of a game like Smash is, does it belong at EVO? Because it's definitely a fighting game. Now, does it belong at EVO? I think is a matter of a couple of things. Obviously, as much as EVO is something that, is paying homage to a genre of games that people love, it's also a big event that, garners a huge audience and, needs to have money, and what I noticed is that, as time has gone on, they've kind of moved out of just these small little rooms with a couple of tables into, being a huge event in like Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, I could definitely understand why some people wouldn't want it at EVO, but long story short, I do think it belongs. It's a huge game. It's big on the Nintendo platforms, and it has a huge following. And it's not like, one of the big things that differentiate, the Power Rangers fighting game from games like, Fighter Z or Tekken is that, it's obviously not as deep, right? But Smash does have some depth to it. Especially Melee, that to me is just evident by the community of people who play it and by how much people have gotten into it, So, yeah, yes, you're probably going to get characters. It's funny that this is happening with Smash for Wii U specifically, because since Melee, I think it's been kind of obvious that a lot of the Smash games aren't balanced, right? So of course you're going to get weird off characters like Bayonetta who are just out of control. I don't know what people are expecting Smash Ultimate to be like, but they are definitely going to have probably defined tier lists that, people can use in the tournament, and people that may be banned or people that may just be deemed unusable. Because there's definitely going to be a large, disparity between that many characters in a fighting game, So, because if you want to start to get into that, was were the MVC2 tournaments any different? I don't remember anybody winning MVC2 with, Guile, Hayato, and, Ruby Hart as a team, No,
so. It was like Sentinel and,
Sentinel, Psylocke, Magneto, Storm, Cable. Yeah, it was basically like all X-Men, So that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I definitely, I agree that it is a fighting game. I guess if I were to play devil's advocate, I would say that the lack of balance is kind of what makes it, and the fact that the last, the last two entries in this series have been so unbalanced to the point where they're, banning characters. I believe like Meta Knight was banned at some point. People were talking about banning Bayonetta. I think that's what a lot of people are pointing to as like, this isn't a real fighting game, because like, if you look at like Soul Calibur 5, for example, like that game was built for like the competitive environment. They obviously put the meter into the game. They changed a lot of mechanics around with the eye to, put this game in EVO and put it in tournaments and stuff like that. And the reason it didn't catch on was because you had characters like Viola who were, massively overpowered and had to be banned from tournament, and it just got to a point of silliness. And so I think a lot of people are just pointing to the fact that, like, if the game's, the grand finals is, a mirror match. And there's all these balance issues. And the last two games in the series have not really caught. I mean, the commentators during this whole grand finals thing were saying, like, thank God this is the last year for Smash 4, It's just like, there seems to be this kind of like disdain for the game. And the fact that like Melee is like the only like true entry in the series that's like a true competitive game. And also I would say that it like you brought up Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but it's also kind of like Smash at EVO, as if it's almost like as if Mighty Morphin Power Rangers just for some reason had this big giant community behind it. And because of the popularity of that game, it therefore deserves the same stage as like a, truly deep fighter like Tekken 7 or something like that. That's where I can see like people have some points. But at the end of the day, I do think it does belong there. And I'm hoping that Ultimate is something that can finally put Melee to rest, or at least make it
hands down. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, come on, what are they at now? Like 80 characters. It won't. They're
right.
going to have tier lists. I mean, because this is Nintendo, ladies and gentlemen. Namco and and the people that make Street Fighter, they're not making this. They're not used to putting out a number of patches for. They don't even have good online. Period. Nintendo, the Switch doesn't even have its service out yet. Let alone to be putting out patches all the time for balance. And then of course, even if they were doing that, how are they really going to be doing that now with 80 characters?
Yeah.
If you ask me, Nintendo doesn't even want to be at EVO anymore. Because, I mean, I feel like the moment they came out and said every character ever, I feel like that was a wrap. This is the new MVC2. And at least MVC2 has Street Fighter characters in it.
Well, I think
I guess Smash does too. But
that's true. That's true. But yeah, Smash at EVO. A lot of perspectives on that. I don't know that we'll get to the bottom of it. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year, though. Last topic for today, and this is a real funny one for me. So this guy, Philippe Musin, was a writer, editor at IGN, and he was caught plagiarizing. People are saying it's basically, it's not debatable. He plagiarized his review of Dead Cells from a small YouTuber. And there's all kinds of evidence, incontrovertible evidence of they're showing timestamps on the video review on IGN compared to this other guy's review. And they're like almost exactly the same wording and same timestamps and everything, same structure to the review and everything. And there was a lot of controversy about that. This guy pointed it out. They ended up taking the review down, replacing it with a new one. And then all these people started, the Reddit mob went after this guy and uncovered all sorts of other reviews and pieces that he posted that were plagiarized or, extremely similar to other things. Even his LinkedIn profile, I just saw today, supposedly was taken from like a template for something. And he's like word for word, just copy pasted into his resume or, on LinkedIn or whatever. FIFA 18, I guess he did some kind of write up for FIFA 18, Metroid, one of the Metroid games as well. He even took, I guess, from one of his own colleagues at IGN, he plagiarized something from one of them. And so this guy, the funny thing about it is, like, aside from the fact that he's plagiarizing, is that he made this YouTube like apology saying, and, quote unquote apology, where he's saying like he didn't intentionally do it. And, there was just some similarities and, my process in doing reviews is the same as everybody else's. And he's basically making the point that when he does reviews, he does a lot of research. And that includes, I guess, looking at other people's reviews of the same games. And he did not really apologize or did not admit to plagiarizing. I don't know if he has at the time of this recording or not. hopefully he will just come out and cop to it. But the thing that struck me most about this is, aside from the absurdity of it, and the fact that, a big company, a big website like IGN gets caught in this kind of issue, is the idea that reviewers, and according to this guy, apparently this is a commonplace practice, are going around and before they write their own review for a game, they are either talking to other gaming journalists, or they are, watching videos or whatever, and using those to, assist in the writing of their own reviews. So you end up with what I had noticed, where like if you go on a Rotten Tomatoes and you look at movie reviews and stuff, like there's usually, of course there's some that have a majority 90% or a majority, low, rotten scores or whatever. But there's also those movies that have a very, a lot of diversity as far as opinions on them. Like Christopher Robin, the movie I just saw a couple of days ago, has like 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people were saying it's great. A lot of people were saying it's terrible. And when you look at like game reviews, you don't get that. It's usually either like all one way or the other. And so it leads to me wondering, like, is this actually happening? Like, people are reviewing a game based on the opinions of others, and we end up with just this kind of, majority opinion that everyone just kind of shares.
Well, I'm sure. If you want my take, it is most definitely happening. And I think that far too many people are just using reviews, period, as a means to, make their judgments on whether or not they should play games. And I think a lot of people miss out on, a lot of potential fun, a lot of games that could have been, they could have enjoyed, but they are using, reviews to decide if the game is good or not. And this makes it even worse because, as we can see here, even the game companies themselves are doing the same thing. You don't want to be the one guy out of the bunch who said Metal Gear Solid 4 sucks, So GameSpot, IGN, Game Informer gives it a 10. Well, Polygon better do the same, or at least be somewhere close. And, I get, and that I think that just adds to the large number of biases that these companies are just going to have, period, with, again, like, I stand, a certain way on a lot of issues, but, there's, the whole social activism thing. Then you have, being bought out, by the developers themselves, embargo this, and now you have, what is this, the fucking Bad Girls Club, excuse me, where, you gave Breath of the Wild a 6. You can't hang with us, what is this, so yeah, I think that I think that is good that it's happening. Part of me feels like, so what, is IGN, I hate them anyway, let them burn. But yeah, I hope that people can kind of see, that, the reviews are to maybe be taken at, 30%, for a various number of reasons.
Well, yeah, I dislike IGN as well, and GameSpot, and pretty much most of the big gaming news sites. And well, it's funny, you said, like, people are getting turned off of playing certain games, but I feel like more often than not, there's just like games don't really get like bad reviews very often, or at least I don't see them posted. Like if a game gets a bad review, you don't see like a headline review about it unless it's like some huge game, like you said, like if the Death Stranding comes out and it's a 1 or something like that, of course that's going to be a headline. People are going to want to read about that, but it seems like, more often than not, like if a big game comes out, it's gonna get like an 8 at least.
Unless it's Destiny.
Yeah, Destiny did have a rocky road. That's true. But even there, there was, if you look at like critic reviews versus audience reviews, on Metacritic or something like that, like the critic reviews only go down so far. I don't think you really see anything below like a 7 out of 10. as far as that goes. And that's like a terrible review, for a company like IGN or GameSpot or something like that, because they're used to giving 8s and 9s and 10s. I mean, I remember when 10s were super rare and reserved only for, Tekken 3s and Halos and stuff like that, Metal Gear Solids or whatever. But now it's like, every big game that comes out gets a 10.
Well, and see, I guess for me personally, I feel about that, in one of two ways. Like for example, I don't necessarily remember, I don't remember like Streets of Rage 2 reviews, or I don't remember, Virtua Fighter 1 or 2 reviews or Knights reviews on the Saturn, but I'm sure none of those games got 10s, right? But those are, like, to me, some of the most perfect games in existence, right? So I think one of the bigger issues, which is kind of why I think this guy, I think part of the reason why, they've, resorted to plagiarism is that, of course, you got to get the review out quick and fast, so just let me take what this smaller guy did and me put it out, and since I'm on a bigger platform, I'll get more views, I think that's a part of it. But I also think that a part of it too is just like, I mean, what are we really even reviewing, when we do these things, because I mean, that's why personally I've always gone back and forth with us, at Hyper Evo with reviews, because I mean, if you ask me, there's 5 scores. Everybody loves this game. Most people love this game. People who like these type of games will like this game. If you're a mother and if your kid made this game, you'd like it. And then this game sucks. And it's like, seriously, I mean, like, and it's like, I challenge people to find a game that doesn't fit in one of those categories, because I mean, there's games that I know aren't that great. That have some, some issues with them, but I personally like them, like probably like Genji on the PS2 or 3, right? And I mean, like, like that will be my review of that game. Like, this game does not have the quality of games like God of War, but it has a lot of samurai stuff and it looks dope. So if you like samurais, you'll like it. 3. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I mean, it's like sometimes I just wonder, like, how much more, can you really go? And like, I mean, I remember those, like a lot of the reviews in the Game Pros. I mean, you would have some that would get full pages, but some of them would just get these couple paragraph write-ups and they just give it a score. And it's like, I mean, at some point, I mean, that's kind of all you really need. I mean, you really going to go into all this stuff about Destiny. I mean, look, if you like scratch off lottery tickets, then you're going to like Destiny. You know what I'm saying? If you know how to use dual analog sticks and you can scratch off lottery tickets, Destiny is the game for you. You know what I'm saying? And that's a lot of people. So, like, in a way, it kind of deserves a 10. But then in other ways, like, because I think that was a big issue with it. Like, a lot of us thought it was going to be Skyrim Mass Effect, and it wasn't. But that's because we thought that was what it was going to be, Mm-hmm. So it's like... and I mean, I can't pull Dread King Dave or King 50 Cal away from Destiny. So it's obviously a 10 to them, Even
though they won't tell you that, but
right. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of like crack, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you had to give crack a review, like if you had to have a crackhead review crack, it's like what can he really say? Like, well, it's kind of a good drug, but it's like I got my little issues with it, but I love it, like translation, it's a 10 out of 10. I need it. You know what I'm saying? So like
oh my God. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, hey, you make a very good point too. Like with a game like that, I remember reading EGM and you get these like 3 people would review the game and it would be in one little column, on the page with 3 other games or whatever. Right. And they were just like 1 paragraph write-ups, like maybe 200 words or something like that. And whereas now you got like, these guys are writing like 2,000 word essays
Exactly. Like these full page spreads,
right. And how can you really review a game like Destiny? I mean, like what experience? I mean, because one person's experience playing that game might be totally different from another person's.
Exactly.
And so, how are you to review that? I mean, where do you even begin? Like, I like this gun. I didn't like that gun. I like this mode. I didn't like. Did you play every mode extensively, or did you just try them all out? Did you try every shader in the game, or you just kind of like skip through the? I mean. Like how honestly can we review these big giant AAA games anyway?
And honestly, a game like Destiny, I mean, honestly, like that's when I feel like you have to like play by yourself and then like play with some friends, because that's like a totally different experience. I mean, I can honestly say if I played Destiny for 500 hours, 450 of those hours were because of either I was playing with the guys in Hyper Evo or I was doing things to level up to play with them. So that really helped make the game for me, so that's why I always go back and forth with that game, because it's hard for me to really say something is bad if you put 500 hours into it. I mean, I played it, but I think a lot of it had to do with the people I was playing with. And honestly, it's the same thing for fighting games. I could pick up, Last Blade 2 on the Switch right now for $8, and I could love the game, by how much I don't even think you can play that online. And then, where's the community going to be at for this game? Whereas I take something like Tekken 7, I think a large part of that enjoyment is just going to be the fact that it's popular, and you'll be able to play it with other people. You'll get matches online. I mean, that honestly helps with these games in this day and age. And so, yeah, I mean, if you really want to talk about, because I understand that you're going to try to rate the game itself, but, to talk about the experience and everything that you'll have, and, and then it's like, well, if you can still have a good experience despite the game not being that great, then like, what does that even mean? Like, then does the game deserve a 6? You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know.
It's very complicated. And I guess that's why people are resorting to plagiarism. Right. I'm just not sure what to think about a game, so I'll just listen to what this person says, and whatever they think, that's what I think too.
And don't get me wrong though, like what IGN did is straight up, bullcrap.
Yeah. I mean, they did correct it. They took the review down, replaced it with another one. They fired the guy. It's really just more like the fact that he's not owning up to it, and he won't admit to the fact that he plagiarized all this stuff. I mean, the other thing is like, if you plagiarize if you're a journalist, quote unquote, and you're writing game reviews and you get caught plagiarizing, like you've been doing it for a while. Like, I don't think anyone should be surprised that this guy like plagiarized all kinds of stuff, because I mean, like if you get to that point in your life and you're plagiarizing, that means you've been doing that since, middle school at least. Right. So he's shut down. IGN, I think. I don't know how the other gaming news outlets dealt with that either. I don't know if they commented on it at all. I guess I should look into that, but that'd be a topic for another day, perhaps. But for now, we can just call IGN very flake news, I think. So. Oh yeah, just flat out fake news. Just fake news. I mean, at the end of the day, boys and girls, just go play the damn game. I mean, we just did a whole segment the last time about betas and stuff. A lot of these games have betas, and the ones that don't, I mean, go to the red box, buy a used at GameStop and take it back. Just try the game out. There's a lot of games that, I get it. You may see it and you don't know, but, try it out. Have some fun. Exactly. Don't let IGN dictate what games you play. I won't call this person out. I probably already have. I won't call them out, but they're in Hyper Evo, and I distinctly remember them saying, "I only play 10s." And it's like, who do you think you are? Like what kind of fun are you really gonna have? I only like games everybody else likes. It's really what that means. And it's so funny because now this person just plays Warframe every day, and that definitely has not gotten any 10s. Dang, shots fired. And not that Warframe is bad, I'm just saying, it just proves my point that, a game's experience is kind of
it's so relative and so subjective.
Yeah. Well, that's why we say just play the game. This is straight games, no filler. Just play the game. don't go reading reviews. Don't go waiting for reviews to come out before you try the game. Just play
exactly.
So, well, I think that'll about wrap it up for episode number 16 of Status Quo. And as I said, it's straight games, no filler. This has been Queasy Crayfish
and Mars Vindicator.
Yes, and we will see you all next Monday for episode 17. We're out of here.